think, answer your question.
Sure, go ahead.
So,
Sustained.
Okay, so let's just ask you this question. Do you have any opinions about whether the post-accident imaging findings can be attributed to, from an imaging perspective, the collision, the ski collision?
Objection leading. Overruled.
we ask that again.
Yes. Do you have any opinions about whether the post-accident imaging findings can be attributed to the collision?
Yes.
What is that opinion?
That those findings predate the accident and date back to at least 2009, as confirmed by a comprehensive imaging workup of Mr. Sanderson's brain performed at the Veterans Administration Hospital.
And so do you believe those post-accident, I apologize that I keep messing this up. You believe that those post-accident imaging findings are in any way related to the collision?
No.
And what was the reason for that 2009 workup, to your knowledge?
Unfortunately, Mr. Sanderson had suffered a retinal artery occlusion, a central retinal artery occlusion that resulted in blindness in one eye, and so he was undergoing a workup for risk factors that would relate to that.
Okay. And do you know any of the people that have done any of his imaging?
I'm familiar with him, yes.
Yeah, and so that 2009 workup, or do you know the people that did that workup?
Yes.
And do you trust the findings that they came to?
Yeah, they're very experienced and well-trained, yes.
Okay, great. That's all the questions I have for now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Egan. Mr. Bueller?
I'm going to start at the end. You're not an eye doctor, are you?
I'm not.
And you said the imaging from the retinal artery occlusion means blindness in the eye. Does that mean total blindness? Or?
That's beyond my expertise, and I'm not familiar enough with his clinical condition to comment on that.
So your term blindness is probably a little broad.
Broad. I only gained that from the histories that were provided with his imaging studies.
Okay, so he may still have some vision in his eye, even though...
Absolutely.
Okay. So I just wanted to point that out. Let's see. Is it true you were a partner of Dr. Wendell Gibby's?
Yes.
And how long ago was that?
It's been probably over 10 years.
Okay. And so you know his work, correct?
Correct.
And you're not critical of his work in general, are you?
No, not at all.
Okay. You never conducted an exam of the client, Terry Sanderson?
No.
Okay. You understand there was a sudden change after the ski crash in Terry Sanderson's condition, brain health.
From my review of the records, that's my understanding.
You understand that through, you read before and after witnesses who confirmed there was a sudden change after the collision, correct?
Do you mind asking that again?
Did you read before and after witness testimony? You
No.
didn't? So you didn't read, isn't before and after witness testimony important to understanding someone's brain injury?
I think it's very important, but it was beyond the scope of what I was to do. I concentrated only on his imaging.
Okay. So you didn't have the before and after information that would improve the diagnosis that you might, or the opinions you might give today in court to this jury.
I understood that with respect to the imaging, we were looking for evidence of brain trauma as would manifest on imaging, and so that's where I concentrated my focus.
Well, you said that MTBI may not be shown on an MRI. True?
A mild brain injury?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay. So Dr. Sanderson could have a brain injury, mild traumatic brain injury, and it not be shown up on imaging, right?
That's correct.
Okay. Now the 2009 imaging, it was asymptomatic, true?
Again, I don't understand. I'm not the clinician who examined him at that time, and I can only look at his imaging in the context of the information, so I don't feel qualified to answer your question.
Thank you. So from the imaging from 2009, 2017, 2021, there's no change, right?
Very little change.
Okay. Dr. Black, no one's given a diagnosis that Terry Sanderson has clinical NPH, or normal pressure hydrocephalus, true?
I don't know that for sure.
Okay. So the NPH was not clinically diagnosed by his VA doctors, as far as you know, correct?
As far as I know, it was only suggested, well, it was suggested in most of his imaging studies, but I don't know what clinical correlation was made.
Okay, and so clinical correlation means that there was some specialist at the VA or elsewhere that understood his NPH was showing symptoms, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So you don't need pathological evidence of to have a MTBI, correct?
When you say pathological, are you saying imaging evidence?
Yes.
That's correct.
Okay. So, Dr. Black, imaging can show a lot that that hasn't really manifested or shown up, correct?
Will you state that one more time?
Okay, imaging can show a lot of things that hasn't shown up in a clinical setting. No,
Yes, correct.
so Terry could have these problems that show up on imaging, but there's no symptoms that would affect him from or stop him from skiing, for instance.
It's possible, yes.
Okay. And in general, you would prefer to have an actual exam of the patient to render your opinions true?
I think that imaging correlated with a clinical exam is the correct way to assess a patient's condition.
So you would prefer to have an exam, correct?
Yes. Well,
Yeah.
prefer, I think they correlate.
Okay.
The information's valuable in both circumstances, but optimally in decision making, you want both types of information.
And so your opinions are not as strong as they would be without this exam, right?
Without a clinical exam,
Yeah.
my opinions are certainly limited to his imaging.
Thank you.
You bet.
Thank you, Mr. Bueller. Mr. Egan?
Dr. Black, you were asked about before and after witnesses, the family members, people close to Mr. Sanderson before and after the accident.
I'm not sure I understood that question, but
Okay, well, my question is just whether opinions from such witnesses would affect your read of the objective findings in the images.
no, they would not.
And what about if you actually met with Mr. Sanderson, would that change the objective findings in the images?
No, because I would defer to a neurologist or neuropsychologist, someone who with that kind of expertise to evaluate Mr. Sanderson. My area of expertise is in brain imaging.
Do you typically evaluate patients when you read their imaging?
With regard to brain imaging, no.
And then after, let's see. I guess we did show one of these boards, but you didn't get to see it. I want to make sure you see it so that the jury knows that you've seen
Okay.
it. And I'll show you. This is 101G, and these are the same. Are these the same images we were looking at on the screen?
Yes,
And they show that before there was a finding that was also after the collision. Is that right?
correct.
Okay, so I think the jury's already seen this. And then we also have two more boards which we didn't show. Your Honor, I move to admit 101H and 101I for demonstrative purposes.
No objection.
Defense Exhibit 101H and 101I, or is this plaintiff's exhibits?
These are ours, yes.
Your defense exhibits are received for demonstrative purposes?
So I'll show you first, Dr. Black. Is this the same idea as the board we just saw?
Yes,
Okay, just with different findings.
yes.
Okay, and then that was 101H, and this is,
Objection beyond the scope.
Overruled?
and then this is 101I. And it's the
Yes.
same idea.
Yes.
Okay, so I just show the jury 101H, 101I. And then my last question for you, Dr. Black, is whether after questioning from Mr. Bueller, you have your opinions about these objective findings you've been discussing on the imaging changed?
They have not.
Okay, thank you.
So earlier you said you preferred to have objective findings from a neurologist or neuropsychologist, correct?
For clinical correlation, absolutely.
Yeah, for clinical correlation. Would you defer to someone like Dr. Goldstein?
I mean, I don't know him, so that name doesn't mean anything to me.
He's a neuropsychologist who testified in this trial. You didn't know that?
No.
So Dr. Goldstein provided clinical correlation, and that would help your opinions if you had that, true?
Sure. I mean, if somebody has expertise clinically that I don't have, but it doesn't change how I interpret the images or my view of these findings.
So your opinions are limited to your view of the images and not the clinical findings, true?
Correct.
Thank you.
You bet.
Mr. Egan,
That's all, Your Honor.
you may be excused. Thank you.